Welcome to WondAROMA, an inside look at the flavor and fragrance industry. I'm your host, Christine Daly. Why a podcast about flavors and fragrances, you might ask? Well, I thought it might provide a nice platform. Perhaps you're a perfumer or a flavorist or a consumer or I don't know, just somebody who's interested in flavors and fragrances. We'll be talking to industry professionals, artisan perfumers, consumers, authors, flavorists, you name it, anybody who might have a unique perspective of the flavor and fragrance industry. So I hope you'll subscribe and tell your friends if you like it. We're going to keep it real, folks. You'll hear dogs barking, computers beeping, cell phones going off. But hey, that's real life. And since I do this from my little office in my house, that's the way it's gonna be. I thought it would be most appropriate to kick off this podcast with a conversation I had with Paul Kiler of PkPerfumes. Paul is a self-taught, award-winning independent perfumer who sells his fragrances at www.PkPerfumes.com. In this episode, Paul Kiler takes us on his personal journey through the world of perfumery. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of WondAROMA. So, when did you decide to become a perfumer? What made you decide that?
Well, a long time ago, in the 90s, I was looking for a new fragrance to wear because I'd been wearing my very, very, very favorite fragrance, gray flannel. I loved it, and a lot of people around me loved it. But I couldn't really smell it much anymore quickly after I put it on. So I was looking for something else I could wear that I liked, and I went out into the malls and sniffed and smelled, and it was awful. And it was in this time of sports fragrances for men, and they all had the same base note, and they all gave me a big headache.
Wow.
And I hated them. I just hated them. And I said, this is awful. Why can't I find a decent perfume fragrance to wear? Jeez. Kind of gave up. And the niche market wasn't out yet, and
This was when?
This was the 90s, late 90s.
Okay.
So I don't know what to do, and so I kind of did nothing. And so then when we moved out here, I just started to explore ideas. You know, what if I could make my own? How would I do that?
Right.
And just started to do investigations and educate myself and teach myself and buy a few essential oils and throw stuff together and turn off your cell phone while you're at it.
Shush! It's off. Go ahead.
Good. And I signed up for every single internet forum I could find. There was the Yahoo perfume making group, which I joined, and now I'm moderator for it. There was botanical perfume making and natural perfume making and historical perfume making.
Just
and
Google searching?
Yeah, and then, finding things. It still is the giant research project in my entire life is learning perfumery.
Right.
And so I joined these forums, and there were these nice, friendly people on them and exchanging ideas, and I kind of tagged along with the conversations, not trying to be a nuisance of myself and ask a question when I didn't think it would bother them too much.
Right.
Because I didn't know anything.
But, I mean, how big was the community at that point? I mean, how many people would you say were active?
Active were maybe 50 to 75.
That many? Wow.
Maybe 100. There was a little more activity then than there has been recently, but I can't really tell you how many people were on the list of the Yahoo perfume making group then.
Right, right.
Now there's over 2,100 worldwide perfumers.
Wow.
And some which have been trained, and sometimes they'll pop in and throw some tidbit of wisdom around.
That's right. Yeah, it's interesting because I think every single one of those 2,100 people have learned how to do this in a different way.
Yeah.
No two people have learned how to do this the same way. So people are coming at this from all different angles, all different levels. And I suppose if I was just, somebody like you who couldn't find a fragrance I liked and wanted to get started, I mean, you can't just go to school. You have to sort of be an apprentice, or what's some practical advice you can give somebody to...
So let's go back to how everybody has learned it differently.
Okay.
So if you go to school, whether it's a perfume school or not, but if you just think about going to school, there's a set curriculum, a set program. This is what you have to learn, and whether you like it or not, whether you're interested or not, this is what you have to learn. Me and most of my other perfumer friends have all worked out learning it. What are we interested in? Okay, let's go investigate it. What's the makeup? What are the parts of this? And so everybody has learned the way good learning takes place when you're interested and you want to learn that.
Right. That's true.
And so you concentrate on that and figure it out. And that's why everybody's learning has taken place differently, because that's the way they think.
They're learning things that they want to know the answers to, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the best way to learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
At least that's the best way to learn, at least as far as how to make it interesting for the learner. So now, then you have to understand what is important for safety, what is important for rules and regulations and laws, and those things. Those are important for every perfumer, right?
Right.
And so that's something that fits better into a, this is what you have to learn, this is what you have to do and know, and there's a test on it later.
Okay, so there's some standard things they would have to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aside from the other things that they would want to know. But is there any place they can go to find out those standard things?
Well, it kind of depends on where you are. If you're working inside of Europe and you're subject to the EU regulations and the IFRA stuff, then I don't know, because I don't live in Europe. I'm on the other side of the planet. I'm on the west coast of the United States, so that's not my world.
Right.
And then here in this country, I'm not aware of any place that I can go to learn. Okay. I very much had to pick this up piecemeal, where I can find it, and figure it out for myself, and learn from the other perfumers that are around me in the communities.
Right, and also keeping in mind that this industry is self-regulated.
Yeah, in this country. It's self-regulated. IFRA is, hey, you wanna follow us? Great. This is what we say.
Right.
I don't follow IFRA. I think it's a bunch of hooey. I think IFRA is evil.
Okay. Tell me more about that. What? Is that funny?
Yeah.
You said a very powerful thing there, Paul.
It's my opinion that the methods to determine what is safe have been wildly exaggerated to the cautious side.
Okay.
And I was listening to a very highly regarded aromatherapist teacher, lecturer, book writer that knows essential oils like the back of his hand, Robert Tisserand, and listening to him refute the science that they're talking about, and they want to eliminate these chemical constituents in perfumes because 3 out of 1,000 people could develop an allergic reaction to it.
Okay.
And frankly, 3 out of 1,000 people, I think that threshold is way too high. I'm allergic to jasmine, hyacinth flowers, tulips, lilies.
You are?
Yeah, I am.
Wow.
They give me a headache. You put me in a room with a 4-inch pot of blooming hyacinths, I'll have a headache in 20 minutes.
Wow.
So, I'm allergic to that stuff.
Yeah.
So, what do? I just don't get around it. I just avoid it.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I think personally, the biggest, the easiest way to deal with this is to say, this product contains fragrances. You know? And then you decide. It doesn't matter what it is, what kind it is. I mean, if we were to get into the detail of what's in there, there would be a page, a document going with every fragrance. So, if you're sensitive to fragrances, do not buy this,
Like I said earlier, all those stupid sports fragrances in the 90s, they all had the same thing in the bottom that gave me a headache.
Okay.
Hence, I did not buy them.
It makes a lot of sense to me,
If it gives you a headache, if you're allergic to it, don't buy it. Don't use it. It's simple.
It's very
Take
simple.
some personal responsibility.
Do you think there's any weight to the argument that I shouldn't have to be in a room with somebody who's wearing that?
I think the people wearing the fragrance need to love their neighbor as their self.
Okay.
And if someone has an issue with a fragrance that's causing them harm, then the person wearing the fragrance needs to love the people around them.
Right. That's a good solution. But you're right, you can choose to use them or not, use those guidelines or not, and you choose not to, which gives you a lot of freedom now to create things that you can actually wear and not give you a headache, right?
Right. Now, I will tip my hat to the thought of IFRA. There are fragrance elements that cause sensitization. Eugenol is one of those things.
Okay.
And I've noticed in myself, if I have worn something with a high eugenol content for a long time, then I get a little rash.
Okay.
So, I'm not saying that they are all wrong. I think the threshold is too high.
Okay. Is that really in this country, is that the only guideline one would need follow if they choose to? Or is there any other restrictions above and beyond IFRA that you know of?
I'm not aware of any laws that are restrictive on fragrance elements. Certainly there are laws restricting certain chemicals and other things in there, but that's more cosmetics law.
Okay.
There are common sense things that you need to know about and learn about so that you don't put your customer in harm's way. Certainly. Okay. And the perfumer needs to practice love your neighbor as yourself too. I mean, this is loving your customer with putting out a product that isn't going to hurt them. Right. Now, some people say, "Oh, then I want to be very, 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 very safe and follow every IFRA guideline possible." So, I mean, that's a valid.
That's an option.
Point.
Yep.
That's a valid option. But it makes very, 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 very bland perfumes too.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say let's say I wanted to get started with my first fragrance. I know there are some companies out there that sell kits. I know there are companies that don't. They just sell ingredients. Our company is one of those. You and I do that together. Is there a kit I should buy? Are there the basic materials I should have on hand and supplies I should have on hand? And where should I do this in my house?
Where should you do? Well, let's take the first one. I haven't approached it from a kit point of view. So my answer is I don't know that many kits. I know there are kits out there. I know Chris Bartlett is in England, has kits that he sells.
Okay.
And there's a little dog barking at your feet.
No, he's outside, actually.
He's outside, okay. And I know Perfumer's Apprentice in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, they have kits.
Okay.
I believe that Perfumer's World in Bangkok has kits.
Okay.
And beyond that, I don't know so much about kits.
But you haven't used them.
I have not used them. I started out composing for myself. So I wanted to compose stuff that I liked and I wore for me. And so I looked at the kits and I was very cautious because of being allergic to jasmine.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of kits start off with jasmine-y type stuff and female type stuff. And so I didn't see this male perfume kit out there. So I started making my own stuff with my own blends without their pre-made kits that seem to be slanted to the female anyway.
Oh, okay. That's true. Yeah. So you developed your own sort of palette to start with.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I was looking for stuff that I like to smell.
Okay. Were they natural? What were they?
When I started out, yes, they were all natural because that's all I knew about.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you thought fragrances had mostly naturals in them, or?
No, that's not really what I thought.
Oh.
But coming from, when I grew up and I moved out of my parents' house, my mother had cooked food with nothing for spices.
Wow.
Zero. And so when I moved out, I went to the markets and I bought every single spice I could find.
You did?
Because I wanted flavor in my food.
Wow.
and so when I went to perfumery, I came from this background of spices, flavorings, and that was my knowledge base, and I think that's a lot of people's knowledge base. And so I started off from that base, and then grew from there.
Interesting. That's interesting that it came from the kitchen.
Well, I think it does for a lot of women too. I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah. So you're
And then you asked where to do it in the house.
Yeah, where should it be done?
Well, I mean, ideally, it's done in a place that's quiet, because perfumery is a very contemplative practice, and it's a time practice. It's not just something that happens over the course of 20 minutes. And so if you can arrange a space that is separate and quiet, that's ideal, I think. I've worked from my home most of my entire life. And so I have my office in my home. I have, my workshop in my garage, and I have my perfume workshop behind my back about 10 feet away. And the computer that runs my desktop also runs a separate monitor for my perfume desk, as I call it.
Okay.
And so everything that my life is, my work and my perfume is, 10 foot from each other in my office.
Okay.
And that's taken over the living room, dining room in my house.
Okay. But you have the privacy and the quiet you need where where you are right now, right?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
You know, my kids are off at school, and so the house is quiet, and
Your
my
dog
wife
isn't barking.
dog isn't barking. The yard man is already gone, so
Okay.
I'm not hearing the lawnmower.
Okay. So you need to spend some time. First, you need to obtain things. Then you need to spend some time smelling them individually, writing notes.
Yes, getting to know them, understanding their evaporative characteristics, what they smell like at different points in their evaporative curve. That's how the perfumer gets to know his materials or her materials.
And do they ever put them on their skin? Not 100% neat material, but how do you test it on on your skin?
You certainly can.
Okay.
You need to dilute it and then put it on your skin. I know my friend Mike Storer in Arizona. He's got stuff on 6-8 places on his arm. He's always wearing stuff.
Does he put it in alcohol, or how do you do that?
Yeah, either alcohol or DPG or something else that it doesn't, it might not like to dissolve in one of those, and you got to use something else. But, yeah, usually, a 10% dilution or 15% dilution is pretty good.
Okay. Okay. And we are talking now only about, well, for right now, fine fragrance development.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you spend some time, you write some notes, you start combining things now.
A lot of times, perfumers dilute a little bottle to work with.
Okay.
To blend with, say. And so they might make everything at 10% or something that has a relative odor intensity to, say, 10%. So if it's a high odor impact, you might have it diluted down to, 0.1% to match the 10% of something else.
Ah, okay.
But at any rate, you have a little bottle diluted down, and then you can dip the strips and combine them, hold them together, some group together in the front, a little farther away, so that you kind of smell relative intensity, and you can blend, you can sort of start to visualize how to make that perfume and what kind of volume you want each to have, importance, that kind of thing.
Okay. And of course you're going to probably use a lot of the things you like. You're going to segregate things by, I love this, I hate this, but it belongs.
Yeah.
Do you ever use the real flower or the real thing outside to say, I need a little bit more indole, or I need a little bit more?
Certainly. Yeah. I just, this past couple of weeks, I've been working on a fresh carnation flower accord. And, I did, it's been one of the things that I really have enjoyed in smelling fresh flowers is that fresh, green, wet smell you get in a carnation. And, I hadn't ever gone after it. And so this past couple of weeks, I found a gas chromatography GC test on Headspace on carnations.
Wow.
And I started from that. That gave me ideas on what to use and relative amounts and things. And so I started to build it. And I'm very pleased with where I've gotten to it with it.
That's great.
But I wanted that fresh, bright, green, spicy, watery carnation. And
so all of those things that how long did that take?
Well, it's not done yet.
Oh, okay.
It's only about 2 weeks now that I've been working on it.
Okay.
And that some people that hear this that say 2 weeks? 2 weeks to work on something and it's not even done? My air perfume, my air fragrance took 2 years.
Wow.
To perfect.
Wow, 2 years.
2 years. So now, just for a prime example, I worked over the winter on a perfume challenge that was supposed to be all natural perfume elements, and it was the concept was winter freshness. And so there were half a dozen perfumers worldwide that joined this competition, and my idea was kind of a fresh carnation, orange flower, linalool, woodsy, smoky something.
Okay.
And my little fragrance that I worked on, I think I ran at it 3 or 4 times. I put a lot of work into it, more than I expected, and it won the competition. And I have so much enjoyed what I made.
Wow.
Now, I've worn it, and I've gone crazy for it. And just this past week now, it's about now, what is this, June?
Mm-hmm, June 2nd.
It's about 5 months old now, sitting in that bottle diluted. And I've been wearing it the past 3 or 4 days, and I've found out now that 5 months later, it started to change and muddy up.
Wow.
And so, the top note is still great, but the bottom notes have just, I don't know what happened to them, but they've just run together and become a muddy mess.
Wow. Chemical reactions, right?
Yes. And so that's part of why perfume is contemplative. It doesn't take 10 minutes to make a perfume.
Interesting.
It takes a long time, because now, 5 months later, I'm saying, oh, this is not so good. This is a failure. I need to rework this.
And is that what you'll do? You'll go back and figure out the bottom notes and what?
Yeah.
Now that's not the only award you've won.
That was hardly an award. That was 6 people playing.
It's an award. You won, but tell me about the some of the awards that you have won. Like what fragrances and where can you get them and that kind of thing. I know on your website, but
yeah, my website. I have one retail outlet in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm working on more.
Oh, good.
And where else is local events that I go to, like the artisan fragrance salons.
Okay.
That are in San Francisco. There are some in Seattle. I think they're not doing them in Los Angeles anymore, but they have them in a few cities on the West Coast only, as far as I know.
And it's a good place to meet other people, artisan perfumers, obviously.
Yeah, they have about 20 or 25 max perfumers there.
Okay.
Selling at these events. And at those particular events, at least half the perfumers only use natural materials.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's very much that natural perfumer profile of perfumers that are there. But what was your other question? Oh, the awards. Awards.
Yes.
So, I had a lot of fun January going to the red carpet in Hollywood at the Egyptian Theater, because I was the first perfumer nominated for a Taste Award for a radio broadcast interview that was done for me for a local National Public Radio affiliate.
Okay.
And they did a nice story on me, about 20 minutes long, on the broadcast.
Okay.
And then I entered that and was a finalist in the category, in a couple categories. And didn't win, of course, because how can radio compete with a movie or a TV show?
The category is too wide.
Yeah, a radio program can't compete with a snarky condescension of a broadcast cable TV show.
Oh, but that's exciting though, right? I mean, it's almost as if now the world is open now to fragrances in that arena, you know?
Yeah, and being the first perfumer nominated
Right.
was a great cool thing. The Taste Awards are sister awards to the Artisan Fragrance Salon events.
Okay.
And so at the Artisan Fragrance Salon events, I've won, I think, about 18 awards, I guess.
Yeah. All in California?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Artisan Fragrance Salon people have started a national competition for fragrance awards. And so I entered 3 of my fragrances in that, and I came home with 10 awards from that national competition.
Wow.
Last year. They're taking entries for the next run at it this year, and I'll throw some things in there too.
So how many were you up against, do you think? Do you know?
How many what?
Other fragrances.
I don't know.
Okay.
I really can't tell you.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to find somebody. I want to learn more about those things. So we've talked about we've begun talking about ways for people to network, maybe Yahoo Perfume Making Group, basenotes.com.
Basenotes.net.
.net has a do-it-yourself forum.
Yeah, DIY forum. Yeah.
And you attend these artisan events, perfumery events, but they seem to be localized.
They are very West Coast localized, yes.
But I don't know. There might be something out here. And I'm in Connecticut, but New York, New Jersey.
I think Sniffapalooza is the big thing happening on the East Coast, but I don't know if it's capable of, if a small perfumer is capable of going to that, setting up a table and that kind of thing. I've never been to one, so I don't know. Right.
Well, the industry, of course, has the Fifi Awards, and but those are more commercial perfumers and companies. But it would be interesting to know. I'm really not knowledgeable about it.
I don't think there is on the East Coast. That's my general impression.
Because of the searching you've done, or?
Yeah, and the lamentations by perfumers on the East Coast that see all the stuff happening on the West Coast and say, "Oh, why can't we get that here?"
Okay. So I think we have covered all of my questions. Okay, so that is the end of part 1 of my discussion with Paul Kiler. He does go on to talk about synthetic versus natural, but I thought I would end the first podcast here and pick it up where we left off next time. So I thank you for listening, and goodbye for now.